Welcome to Health Diary. My name is Winnie Lubembe, and we're coming to you from the Dusit Princess Hotel and Residences right here in Nairobi. And as promised last week, on this week's episode of Health Diary, yes, we'll focus on the sickle cell disease, but with a special emphasis on the age factor, because statistics indicate that more than half of the children born with sickle cell disease will die before the age of 5. But is it always the case? And should this be happening in this day and age? Well, we discuss all that after this fact of the matter. According to the World Health Organization, approximately 5% of the world's population carries trait genes for hemoglobin disorders, mainly sickle cell disease and thalassemia. In Africa, data shows that 50 to 90% of children born with sickle cell disease die before they reach their 5th birthday. However, with proper screening and medication, children with sickle cell disease can live longer. Well, let's address the age factor and why this is such a big conversation here on the show today. And of course, to help us with the same, as far as sickle cell disease is concerned, because we promised to continue with the same this week, we have Dr. Edwin Walong, who is a pathologist. First time we've actually had a pathologist here on Health Diary, like when I'm hosting. So thank you so much for creating time for us, Dr. Walong. And of course, we also have Eunice Aching Owino, who is a sickle cell advocate, here to also share her journey as far as sickle cell is concerned. I mean, we have known each other for a very long time.
A very long time.
So it's so good to see you doing very, very well.
Thank you.
But most importantly, really, to agree to share the information as far as sickle cell disease is concerned. But we're talking about beyond 40, because there's a lot of misconception. Statistics say more than half of the children born with sickle cell will die actually before the age of 5. And then couple that with a lot of misconceptions that we've had. Initially, there was like the 7-year mark, and then after 7, 13, and then after 13, there's 21, and then after 21, a lot of things, okay? So just understanding the disease in itself, because like you said, your focus is mostly on the cell, right?
Indeed.
So what is it that we need to know and understand about sickle cell disease before we even come to focus on what then causes death?
Indeed. So sickle cell disease, we know that it is a specific disease of the red blood cell, and the disease occurs because of a genetic trait that is inherited. And once inherited, the gene, specifically genes that form hemoglobin, the protein hemoglobin, have an abnormality. The abnormality within that protein is what is called a substitution, where there's a protein change, an amino acid change in the whole protein chain. So what that does is that it makes this specific protein within the red cell, which we call hemoglobin, less soluble in certain states within the body. So when it's less soluble, it crystallizes. Once it forms a large crystal, the red cell will lose its shape because it has formed a crystal. So once the red cell loses its shape, then the problem is that it will be unable to move through the small blood vessels and block them. When it blocks the small blood vessels, then the area that is perfused by that small blood vessel then does not get enough nutrition. Its waste products are not taken out. And in that process, those cells will die.
Can we go back to when you were diagnosed and how life was like, and some of the misconceptions? And especially, I'm really, really keen about the age, aspect of the same, because your family is very, very supportive from the word go, no?
Yep.
Yeah.
So, as you've said, I was diagnosed at the age of 8 months. And the reason why my parents decided to diagnose me early is because I lost a sister who was born before me.
Okay.
So when I was born, my father saw that I have the same symptoms as my sister. But you see, when my sister was born, they were in the countryside. But I was born in Nairobi.
Okay.
So years later, I was born in Nairobi. So when I was born, they saw the paleness, the yellowness of eye, and then I stopped breastfeeding at an early age, I think at around 3 months or so. And they were like, okay, so by the time I was 8 is when they took me to the hospital, because now I used to have swollen limbs and small body. I wasn't growing like normal children, like babies grow. At a certain month, you weigh and all that. So for me, it wasn't, I was very tiny. And that's why they decided to diagnose me. And from there, the journey began. Number one, just having also a very good doctor who took care of me until the age of 13. Then he left to further his studies. Then he came back recently, but he came back some years back. Then he practiced for a while, but now he's retired. But doctors don't retire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once the doctor, one was the doctor.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
he's those people who right now, even I was just questioning him, like when I was around 13, there's a time you hospitalized me for almost 3 months, and I was given 72 injections. So I wanted to understand why. And he can't remember because he sees so many patients. But for me, he's one doctor who never told me I cannot do things. For me, he was like my normal doctor, my confidant, and he told me, you need to understand yourself, take care of yourself.
Yeah.
So when I started doing advocacy is when now I started meeting people who are being given death sentences. You can't do this, you can't do that. Because I was born in 1981. In 1981, there was no much research around sickle cell.
Yeah.
Because right now where we are at, there's better science and medication around sickle cell, a lot of research being.
Yeah. I'm just curious. So you growing up, did you hear like either in hush tones or maybe we'll tell you, you know what? Yeah, so at age 8 is when you got your diagnosis. But
8
maybe
months.
8 months, not yes, 8 months. But maybe you will not see age 5. And then after age 5, 13. And then after 13.
For me, and
yeah.
that environment, I could hear that. Because maybe if the doctor said it, he told my parents in confidence.
Okay.
Then also my parents never told me that. So for me, it was the one person who used to keep me in check was my mom. Put on your sweater, drink water, play 5 minutes, you need to rest, take a break.
Okay.
But I never used to understand.
Yeah.
Until 13 is when now I came to understand, yeah, this is what I have, and this is how I need to care for myself.
Okay.
Because in primary school, my mom was also my primary school teacher.
Okay.
In class
So
8,
she's literally with you all the time. Make sure you
Yeah.
have your sweater on.
all the time. But she's the same person who used to buy me the swimming costume.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have never gone into a swimming pool because that was one of my triggers.
Yes, for Christ.
So I remember getting a letter even from the doctor just to exempt me from some activities in school.
Okay.
But as a child, you want to be everywhere. You want to do football, you want to swim, But now it's when also I started now understanding my triggers because I remember if I'm beaten, the stress, just the thought of you beating me, I'll faint immediately. And it's not pretending. I'll faint immediately because already everything starts shutting down because I'm afraid. And then number 2, when I enter swimming pool, less than 5 minutes, crisis. Immediately you find, like now all the sickling cells have blocked all your joints, you can't breathe, the oxygen is low, your HB has gone low. So it's also now a place of now coming back and discovering now, okay, I should not do this.
So why the specific age ranges, if we could say that, but even the most definite, statistic, which is, by age 5, most of the children, almost half are not able to survive. So why this, different age sets in terms of like the rates of survival? Very quickly before we go on a break.
So the first, I will say 3 months of age, the babies are born with a different set of hemoglobin. So it's called fetal hemoglobin, the one they had while they were still in the womb. That hemoglobin is not affected by the change. So it is stable, at least within the first few months of infancy. When that wears out and is replaced by the adult type, now the adult type of hemoglobin is the one that has a change, and that is now what is vulnerable to crystallizing. Then the other problem with childhood is, especially early childhood, infancy and childhood, at the point of weaning. Remember, breastfeeding prevents a lot of infection. So once a child reduces on breast milk and eventually stops breastfeeding, the maternal transfer of antibodies, some which were transferred while still in utero, are diminishing. So there's this vulnerability to infection. So at that point, that is why the vaccines become really important early on, so that they build up that child's immunity to infection, because infection is one of the triggers. And then beyond around 1 year, of course, you find that the child is active, fluid intake, they get a lot more dehydrated. Those are some of the triggers of sickling. So the childhood period has a lot of constraints in that there's an increased risk of infection, the new environment, and so on. And that is why you find these, and of course there's challenges with nutrition. You find in many sites in this country, childhood nutrition is a problem, right? And nutrition prevents infection, nutrition prevents various things. So when there's a nutritionally stressed child, then there's also that. And of course, the child has a higher surface area, so there's greater exposure to cold.
For a sickle cell, because we understand like the difference in terms of morphology. I'm trying to be linear, right? So then does that also like change over time and predispose one to this other either infections, illnesses, diseases? It's a lot. My brain is on overdrive right now, but let's take a break.
Right.
When we come back, we'll discuss that and much more right here on Health Diary. Welcome back to Health Diary, and today our focus of conversation is on sickle cell disease, but now understanding the age factor and why it is important for all of us to have the correct information, because like we said, there's a lot of misconceptions out there as far as age of survival when it comes to sickle cell disease. So to help us with that conversation, Dr. Edwin Walong, who is a pathologist, is here to give us more info. Today we're learning science, biology, all those things combined, together with Eunice Aching-Owino, who's a sickle cell advocate, and she has been doing this since forever. Okay, and she's here to also share, beyond just the disease itself, her journey as well. So Eunice, I'm just curious to understand, what is like one of the most outrageous myth that you've had as far as sickle cell disease is concerned, especially with the survival, that really shocked you, and you're like, listen, no, this is not the case. This should not be happening.
Like people don't live to a certain age. The research that was done way before that says a lot of children don't see their fifth birthday, which right now is a lie. We are here. I'm 42, proud to be 42. Yeah. I know a 90-year-old.
Nothing like 42.
I know, I look 24.
Right?
Yeah. So, and then also I met, there's a 90-year-old I know in the States. I met a 65-year-old during World Sickle Cell Day in Vihiga County. She's a grandmother. She's a mother. She's a grandmother. And she's a community health worker. And people are pushing to just create that awareness. So this thing of ladies don't get married, ladies don't get children, ladies don't live to a certain age, they can't be wives, they can't do this, they can't do that. So before research, there was a lot of do nots. There's a do not list that a lot of doctors will tell you, especially even the professors will tell you that. But on the ground, you as an individual, the older you get, it's like the older you get, the more you understand your body, your health. You know your do's. Because with sickle cell, you just need to understand what are the triggers, what always makes me sick.
And that's different from person to person, yeah?
It varies from person to person, but some things are standard. Okay. Something like the pain, it's cut across. Yeah. Sickle cell is unique to each and every one person who is diagnosed with sickle cell today. Okay. It's like your fingerprints. Okay. The male side for them also, because not majority usually come out because of this thing of Africa. No, you're a man, you need to move up. There's nothing like running up. If you're sick, you're sick. When your blood levels are low, they are low for everyone. It doesn't matter if you're male, if you're female.
So for sickle cell, to be specific, so what are some of these changes? Because again, like we said, when we went to the show, this is me now bringing on the little science morphology. It's already in sickle shape, right? But then again, so then as we grow older, do we experience like more changes? Do they become more weaker? Do we see the rate of regeneration? A lot of questions.
It's a good question, though, because even as Eunice has mentioned, the older someone is, the more stable things appear to be. The challenge now with aging is that aging is particularly harsh, not just for individuals with the sickle cell, but everybody is harsh on the blood vessel. So not only the blood vessels that are affected, we are familiar with the blood vessels to the heart, the blood vessels to the brain. We know about strokes, we know about heart attacks. But then again, all blood vessels tend to be affected in sometimes equally, sometimes not. So how do the blood vessels get affected? So for most individuals, even individuals in this room, we'll all build up plaques of cholesterol. Because that is how blood vessels tend to age in a way. That can be slowed down through various things, exercise, diet, and so on. But then what triggers these changes? Sometimes we really do not know what triggers them. Some tend to occur in younger individuals. So you'll find a 20-year-old with changes that may, within the blood vessel, that you may expect, say, in a 50-year-old. So what that early change can be a major problem, especially in sickle cell, because in addition to all the environmental exposures we have, what we eat, what we drink, what we're exposed to in the air, vehicular pollution, air pollution, there's also another challenge to the blood vessel, and that's from within. So the changes that are occurring, that do occur periodically in the red cell, some blood vessels have their own blood vessels that supply them. So because of that, they may change and become weaker at withstanding that. But the good thing is that there are various ways of preventing this change within the blood vessel. We have strong health messages on how to avoid hypertension, how to avoid what. So those are the main things to avoid. Of course, to avoid the crisis, as she has talked about. And there are various ways to avoid these changes, the sickling change in the blood vessel. I didn't talk about it. There are medications that will prevent the cells from sickling. There are lifestyle changes, as she's described, that will prevent the cells from sickling. So the strain or the changes on the age, those aging changes on the blood vessels will be reduced.
Eunice, I'm just curious to understand. So growing up, of course, the things that you were able to do, despite the fact that you were told do not, or you will not be able to do. But even as we grow older, I mean, as they say, you can't compare like a 20-year-old to like, a 50-year-old. So are there things that maybe you have found yourself maybe slowing down, on, or having to take more care of yourself just to, first of all, prevent the triggers? Or if they're there, maybe crisis, not triggers, prevent the crisis. Or if it happens, then you're able to sort of like handle it in a different way.
So personally, I'm one person who lives, my motto is to live a day at a time. If I can't handle anything today, I'll do it tomorrow. Not that I'm postponing. No, because I need to love myself
and listen to what your body is telling you.
And listen to what my body is telling me. Because if I don't listen to my body, we always joke about it, but this body doesn't have spare parts.
True.
As much as, yes, the body always heals itself, but you need to love yourself. Love yourself, because you can only share what you have when you yourself has experienced it. And that's why we advocate for sickle cell. I have experienced, I've lived, I've spent days and nights in hospital. Sometimes that pain comes that you can't even bear. But what are you supposed to do is understand what works for you.
So what exactly then causes death in sickle cell? We cannot end the show without asking that question and getting that answer. So is it the disease itself? Is it the
mental
factors, is it, the lack of maybe what exactly? Because there's a lot of things, that come to play.
Indeed, so it's a combination of factors.
Okay.
And one of the most common triggers is infection and inflammation.
Okay.
Because infection, and as Eunice has mentioned, they produce the environment where there is low oxygen in circulation at that particular site. Okay. So the cells change into a sickle shape. And if infection is, say, systemic, involving the whole body, then the stresses are much higher. Okay. So any cause of any infection or any form of inflammation is how the body tends to fight injury, not just infection, any injury. Yeah. For example, a fractured bone will cause inflammation. Yeah. So also inflammation occurring would also trigger the cells to change into a sickle shape.
So then, understanding that, what is it that people need to do to either prevent, or for sickle cell warriors, what is it that then they need to do to sort of like be in control and not let the disease sort of like be in control? Very quickly, because we need to end.
So just to prevent these infections as much as possible, whatever infection, be it a viral throat infection, be it malaria, be it the bacterial infections relating that she's talked about, pneumonias, need to prevent them from an early age. And then to give the cells the right kind of hemoglobin so that they don't sickle as much. There are the treatments for that, fortunately. Okay. And the other thing is just to maintain a general state of health. Okay. She's talked about mental wellness, what it does to the blood vessel. Yeah. So again, I'm going back to the blood vessel because it's a pretty common thing.
Yeah.
And of course, we've not discussed it. Maybe we'll discuss it in another forum. What sort of treatment options are there if someone is born with sickle cell?
Do you want to mention that, like 2 seconds? Just to mention, and then we'll come back and talk about
Unfortunately, it's also coming into this country. Oh, nice. Bone marrow transplantation is coming into this country. And that means you're giving this individual a new set of cells that do not have that abnormal hemoglobin, that sickles. Yeah. It's definitely expensive, may not be available for everyone, but at least the option is there.
For it to be affordable for everyone.
Very affordable.
All right. Okay. But until then, Eunice, thank you. Eunice Achengo, we do a sickle cell advocate and, of course, a sickle cell warrior. Thank you so much for your time today, Eunice, and Dr. Edwin Walong, pathologist. Thank you so much. We have learned so much today. Let me tell you, my brain is literally now on overdrive trying to, absorb all this info. Plus, I have so many questions for you, but I think we'll have like a separate forum for another conversation, and especially on the bone marrow transplant as a treatment for sickle cell disease. So I hope we can make you can make time for us, please, next time. Yes, thank you. All right, time now for you to take a look at this health tip.
The first thing that you do is stand in front of the mirror, and you're looking to see, are there any differences in shape or size? Are there any skin changes? Is there any discharge from the breast? The next step is move. You put both hands above your head. If there is a worrisome lump, you may notice that one side is moving up and the other side is staying down. The next thing you do is you put both hands on your hips and press forward. And what that does is you can feel these muscles over the breast tightening. So sometimes if you have a very small, very subtle lump, doing that can tend to make it a little more prominent. The last bit is the feel bit. And the trick is to use the 3 pads of your fingers and gently press down the breast tissue against the chest wall, going round in a circular manner and ending with the nipple areola area. Once you're done with the breast, it's important to examine the armpit area. So similarly, if there's a problem with the arm or with the breast, you may feel the glands under the arm swollen.
Well, after 2 mini-series on sickle cell disease, now I know that you have a better understanding as far as the disease itself, the behavior, and of course what to look out for. So if you are a sickle cell warrior, the takeaway message is understand your triggers and take care of yourself. And for those of us who might not be carriers or do not have the disease, point is support one another, offer as much support as you can, and demystify all the myths as far as sickle cell disease is concerned, and especially on the age factor. But if you have any other question, our social media handles are down at the bottom of your screen. Use them and let's continue with the conversation. But for now, My name is Winnie Lubembe. A special thanks to Dusit Princess Hotel and Residences right here in Nairobi for hosting us today. Until next time, adios. Right as far as sickle cell. What did you unaniangalia hivi?
Of course.
Okay. So, no, let me just go with them, with the children, kwanza. Ngoja hata ni gather my thoughts.
Unajua ninoka?
Jua neno. Nenoka.